What is up, Phoenix family? I'm Ross Cessna, your effervescent and omnipresent host. We're about to go on an esoteric and occult odyssey. This isn't the designer spirituality that is polluting pop culture. It's your opportunity to explore age-old wisdom in the raw. With no further delay, I present to you the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast. What is up, everybody? We are joined with Stefanie Caponi. Stefanie, what's up? How you doing?
Hey, Ross. I'm great. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Kind of like centered and calm right now, just sipping on my tea.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So last week when we spoke, it was on Judgment. And then after Judgment, you come to the World card, which is a very fitting card to come to. For one, it's the end of this whole stint of everything with the Fool's Guide to Tarot, and it's the last episode of this podcast. I think it's a good way to end everything, honestly. It's like the pretty little bow on the package, I guess.
I'm very honored to be a part of not only this whole journey that we've been on together, going through every card in the tarot deck in depth, but part of your very last episode of this part of the journey, which, as you said, is very fitting for the World card.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's honestly pretty cool to be able to end it with somebody, and for somebody who I've spent as much time talking to as you. I mean, when you really consider all the time that we spent talking, we probably spent 24 hours or more total talking about tarot and everything. That's pretty impressive.
It's definitely been a very cool and different, unusual experience. I talk about tarot all day, with clients and with my friends, but it was really nice to get an outside perspective, and also like a male perspective. I think I have like maybe two male presenting friends that I discuss tarot with.
Yeah, it's very cool to be able to like actually talk about it, because I don't really have many people in my life that read tarot, for one. And then some of the people that do read tarot that are in my circle, I don't really connect with a lot of their perspective, I guess, because I don't know how to say this and not sound like a dick, so I'm just going to say it and sound like a dick. Some people are really hokey when it comes to reading tarot. I really don't connect with that, so I don't know.
I understand.
So we're on the World card. I had asked you to show me your World card. I don't have your cards in front of me to hold up one, so I kind of broke our ritual of me showing you your own card. But one of the things that I like about your card is it really kind of is this reflective. There's a sense of self-reflection, I guess I get in it, or like closure, kind of this reviewing of everything. And I think that's very fitting. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, though, because I do have a question for you.
Oh boy. All right. What's up?
What's the astrological symbol of this card, or like the zodiac sign?
Okay, it's Saturn. I was right. All right. Whew.
Another thing that comes up for me too is the four little creatures are representative of Leo. The bull is for Taurus. The earth sign, or man, is Aquarius, and then the eagle is Scorpio, which are kind of on the offset of the Rider-Smith weight card.
Yes, and those are, in astrology, those are the fixed modalities, the fixed signs. So they're all traditionally known as like the most stubborn signs, because their energy is fixed. So once they've made their mind up about something, you're not going to change it unless you can be really tricksy psychologically and make them think it was their idea. I'm unfortunately mostly fixed sign, so getting me to change my own mind is a really tough thing.
I want to say I have Scorpio. My moon's in Scorpio, so that's definitely true for me too. I can be really stubborn.
Same. Yes.
So you said it is Saturn. What's Saturn all about again?
Saturn is like, if you think of the moon as being kind of like that mother energy, of that feminine energy, Saturn is like father energy.
Okay.
If you can kind of wrap your mind around that and also take out gender implications.
So it's just more of a paternal, and maybe not so nurturing, but more
Oh, not nurturing at
naturing.
all. Yes, there's no emotions involved with Saturn. Saturn's about work. In astrology, you have like the wheel of the 12 houses, and there's always houses that are opposite one another, but they're linked. So the fourth house and the 10th house are linked together. The fourth house is the house of like the home, our spiritual foundation, our like psychological foundation, the home we were raised in. That's ruled by Cancer, how we were nurtured, so we can then go out and nurture in the world. And across from it in the sky is the 10th house, which is the house of like career and how we're seen out in the world, public recognition. And that house is ruled by Saturn and Capricorn.
Okay. Um, and also, there's like the Saturn return thing, and that's like, in case people don't know, that's when the universe is trying to tell you, get your shit together. We're gonna spot check what you're doing with yourself, and if you're fucking up, you got to get yourself back on track.
This is true. Saturn is basically our little helper in the sky that drags us into becoming more responsible humans. It's also the planet of like karma and old age, and it rules our bones. And
Whoa, wait, go back. That's a very heavy concept. It rules our bones.
Yes.
Wow.
I don't know where I get the information. I just have all the information. Yeah. So Saturn, people freak out about their Saturn return, and it's a huge deal because it takes almost 29 years for Saturn to go all the way around your chart to come back to where it was when you were born. And at that point, it touches your natal position of Saturn. And it's like, okay, you've learned all of these lessons, and now it's time to level up, which is very fitting for the World card. But the thing with Saturn is, and I'm now learning this because I'm going through it, but every 7 years you get like a Saturn check-in, because as Saturn moves around, it's then going to like square an aspect to your natal Saturn. So you get these like check-ins to make sure you're on the right path. And if you're not, then Saturn's like, well, I'm going to throw a bunch of shit at you and see what you're made of.
So it's like a quarterly review every 7 years.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, I like how, I guess that is a very fitting card, because my understanding of the World card is, in one sense, it's completion, it's integration about all of these experiences that we've had. And it's also kind of closure of one chapter if you've learned the lessons. But my understanding, the reversal, or maybe not even so much the reversal, but the other side of that, though, too, is it can mean viewing yourself as less than despite doing the work, like lack of confidence. What's the other one I'm looking for? Feeling kind of overlooked, and then also feeling like things aren't really progressing in some way.
Right.
What else would you add, or like what's your take on all of this?
If we're speaking to the reversal, sometimes because Saturn is like really like the Lord of time, thinking that, you're kind of like on the cusp of this like big transformation and closure, but maybe like clinging on and like unsure of yourself. Or perhaps a lot of times people stay in things longer than they need to. Yeah. Stay in relationships longer, jobs longer, just staying past your expiration date. And so when the world is reversed, I always think of it as staying in something past its expiration date, because I think, unlike when the Fool is reversed, where people are just afraid to take the leap into the unknown, this is like afraid to leave the comfort zone, even if it's like the devil,
Mm-hmm. In one of the books that I read somewhat frequently, there's a saying, and it says, oftentimes, what is it? It's easier to stay in our. Oh man, I had it on my head and it completely went out. I don't know, but basically, it's saying that like we'd rather stay in familiar pain than face the unknown. So I definitely agree with that. It's interesting because in my personal life right now, I'm in a big transition with ending this, with starting some new projects, closure on other things. And there is a big sense of uncertainty and discomfort in it because it requires an increased sense of vulnerability. And it's so very, very interesting, like looking at how this whole process started with this podcast, because it started from a sense of wanting to be vulnerable. And it was very cathartic going through everything from beginning to end. But now coming to this point again where I have to be vulnerable, but in a more social and direct way rather than through the comfort of behind my computer screen with a microphone. And it is intimidating, but at the same time, it's really exciting too. And I think that people, I know I need to remember, and I assume other people do as well, that anxiety and fear is actually the same energy as excitement. It's just really what lens you're choosing to see what you're facing through.
I could not agree with you more. Yeah, like when we're starting a new venture, it's in order to make any type of up level, we have to be really willing to completely release everything that we defined ourselves by before.
Mm-hmm.
And just the only thing we bring with us are the lessons and just where we are, we have to be so present with it. You can't carry the baggage and the fear and all of the stuff that you went through before. It's something new now. So there's a lot of surrender in it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were discussing the concept of identifying with our pain. And I think a lot of people identify with their pain so much that when it's time to let that go and move forward, even that can be destabilizing because we've built this whole personality off of ourselves based upon pain, or it doesn't even have to be pain necessarily, but we construct these, I don't want to say facades because that's not the right word, construct these images of ourselves that are functional at the time, but they're not, they can become restrictive if we hold on to them too long. And I think that that's really important to identify that. And I think that's kind of where the world card comes in some ways. In my understanding, it's sometimes represented as the snake eating its own tail, or the Ouroboros, or however you pronounce that. And I always think of snakes on one hand as symbols of wisdom, on the other a symbol of kind of rebirth in the sense of shedding the skin. So it's like you had said, you maintain those lessons, but you're also letting go of a lot of the baggage of it. And I think that the Ouroboros is a really good representation of that. And then also, it just shows the continuation of the cycle where you'll take on new layers of things and then shed that as well.
Exactly. And to your point, it's extremely destabilizing when you no longer identify with something. You have to grieve it. I was having this conversation last night. When you get to the point of, we want change, we want the next level, we want the life of our dreams and all the things that whatever it is that we want, but we almost don't know how to be in the world without those other things, because that's the way that we've been identifying. And it's twofold, because it's not only coming to terms and grieving who you were, then you also have to deal with other people's reaction to your change and your shift. Because that brings in huge triggers and fear of rejection. When people are all, they've known you as being this way, and then it's destabilizing to them when you shift because they don't know how to interact with this new part of you. And then at a psychological, subconscious level, they're seeing the mirror of them like questioning themselves, like, have you moved on? Have they? Like, what, like it starts bringing up all this shit in them, and then they project that outward. So I think a lot of people don't even take that part of the equation into consideration.
That's a really interesting point, to think of the concept of other people kind of grieving your change or identifying you with these old things that no longer hold up. On one hand, it makes me think of something that Carlos Castaneda mentions in his Don Juan books. He talks about the sense of, to be like a true man of power, and he uses man not in the sense of gender, but just in identification as a human being. To be on the path of knowledge or whatever, you have to be willing to kind of have no strong connections with people, because those connections can really be limiting in a sense. And I don't necessarily agree with that in its entirety, but if you make connections with the wrong people, those things can really become restrictive as well, because the more you try to get out of that circumstance, the more you're kind of held down by it, by those other people's opinions of you. There was a scientific study, and I always get the name of it wrong because it's similar to another one. But the basic premise of the study was they allowed one monkey to climb up the top of this ladder, and it got a reward. And then they sprayed these other monkeys down when the monkey got the reward. And then eventually all of the monkeys learned to kind of pull the monkey that was going for the ladder down. And then eventually none of the monkeys even tried for the ladder anymore. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's really important about who you surround yourself with, because sometimes people have learned something similar, that if they go for their dreams, they're going to be kicked down. And I think this is incredibly true in like family lineages and stuff like that. Like there's a big area for that, but people can kind of be a lead anchor. At the same time, if you get around the right people, they can help you kind of get to the top of the ladder as well. That way it's not so polarized. But I think that that's something important to consider. And I don't remember my other point, but
it's okay. That was a really big point, and it's very, very true. It's like when we come to the world and that shows up, it's really asking us to be at peace with ourselves and where we're at, despite anything external.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's hard for most people, because a lot of us spend so much time identifying ourselves via outside things, that having no point of reference beyond internally is uncomfortable. I mean, most people can't even sit in a room by themselves quietly for 5 minutes without freaking the fuck out. And I mean, when I first started doing it, yeah, it was terrifying too, but I think that there's so much benefit in just learning how to identify yourself with the outside world from the inside, rather than identifying your inside from the outside, like switching that whole process.
I think that's kind of I learned that from tarot and from engaging with it and journaling and being by myself. I was listening to some video, and this woman that I love, her name's Tanya Gabrielle. She makes YouTube videos. She's like an astrologer and like numerologist. But she's like a classically trained composer. And she put it really beautifully, because I'm always trying to tell people that, like, to, move away from the thought of we always have to direct everything out, like go, 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 go. We don't know how to look inward. We don't know how to be quiet. We don't know how to pause. And she was like, there's power in pause. She's like, in music, when things like come to a pause, it's very powerful. And like in dance, when you're moving so quickly and then you kind of go into like something still, like that's a power move. And I was like, shit, that is so right. I love that, like, comparison.
No, I definitely think that's true. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
It's okay. I was just gonna say, like, that's like, if people could see how, like, their lives as a movie, and see those like pauses as like a really a dramatic pause, is a very powerful thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it goes into the concept of kind of allowing rest in our lives instead of
Mhm.
this constant state of moving forward.
Right. I think the more you become comfortable with those pauses, that's when, once you stop like treading water and fighting it, that's when like all that inner knowledge kind of drops in. And that's when you become aware that nothing is, nothing comes from outside of you. It's all inside.
Hmm.
You don't need validation or acceptance from other people. You're doing things hoping to like seek love and like gain attention and gain recognition and gain accolades, and determine your self-worth based on what how many job offers you get, or how many creative projects that are successful financially and well received, and how many likes and blah blah blah. I'm like, none of that shit matters.
Hmm. I think that that's really interesting because that's one of the things that's been coming up in my own personal life. From starting this whole process and having that mindset where it doesn't matter, then going through it for 3 years, and kind of getting really frustrated and burnt out, to coming back to the point of, honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is if I'm having fun and how I see myself, and the quality of life I'm able to live as a result of things, and focusing on what's going right rather than what's going wrong. And making more time to kind of allow those different pauses. Uh, I was reading a book, and it's kind of about communication and how to present yourself. And one of the things that it said is, in order to look more confident, comfortable, and secure in whatever you're sharing, one was to slow down in speaking. The other one was to add more pauses, because it shows a sense of confidence with everything. And I find that to be really, really true and interesting. The other thing that I would want to say too is, you had talked about how when you pause, you allow intuition to come in. And if you think about like the High Priestess card, to me, that is about kind of this pause energy, and it's about intuition, esoteric wisdom, um, and kind of this, I don't want to say gnosis because that's not the right word, but this divine knowing. Um, I guess the last thing I'll share on that is this. I've been doing yoga nidra, or I had been doing yoga nidra. Are you familiar with that? It's sleep yoga is another word for it. It's an interesting like meditative, relaxive thing. But there's a word called a sankalpa that you're supposed to kind of think of at the beginning and the end of the practice. And sankalpa is kind of like an intention. And the lady who told me about the sankalpa, she said it's not something that you really think about; it'll come to you at one point. And my sankalpa is actually allow space. And it's so funny because when I was operating with that sankalpa, like keeping it in the forefront of my mind, um, a lot of good ideas came to me. But then as a result of switching back into my old operating system of constantly be busy, um, I've lost connection with it somewhat. But now I'm switching back into that allowing space part of my life, and everything is somewhat smoothing out. And it, to tie it back to the world card, that's kind of the integrative experience of everything I've been learning.
Yes. Slow hand clap. I love that.
So, do you have anything else that you want to add about the world card in general?
In general, no. I think we touched on oh, well, I guess in general, um it's interesting that the on a Rider Smith weight card, the body language of the figure looks like the reversed hangman
I've never noticed that, but that's interesting. Yeah,
with the
because
leg crossed. It's
how
like,
how do you take that?
I always thought that when you're in hangman, you're waiting to drop into death, essentially. It's like it's the pause before the transformation. And so if the hangman is upright in the world, then they've mastered the art of stillness as movement.
Oh wow. Letting things come to you, basically.
Yeah. And just realizing that there's a lot of movement in stillness. And that movement that comes in stillness is allowing the universe to create on your behalf rather than try to force your hand because of impatience. So I feel like the world is the integration of learning to work with divine time rather than trying to force human time, which is the lesson of the hangman.
I like that a lot.
Thanks. I almost forgot to say it, but I have a little picture of the Rider-Waite-Smith one on the side of my computer. And I was like, oh, hey, buddy, we should talk about that.
Yeah, I'd never considered that. One thing that's interesting too about it being the reverse hangman is numerologically it's 2 and a 1, which is somewhat of a reversal of the hangman.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess you could almost kind of view it too as like the butterfly coming out of the cocoon as well. If you view the hangman as being like a butterfly cocoon. I don't know why my mind went there, but
you're a Pisces. It makes sense. So I guess like also when the world card is reversed, you can always kind of say like, hey, like let's think back to hangman. If you're working with a Rider-Waite-Smith deck and that imagery comes up to you, you can always say like, okay, like what do we do and pause while we're waiting for this transformation? Or how can you like loosen your grip on trying to like fully come out of that chrysalis, as you were saying.
I like that a lot. So since we talked about the Rider-Smith-Waite one, I want to ask you about yours. What what does your imagery represent to you?
Well, so we all know that this is a a deck about exploring your psychology when your life falls apart. So the world card for me was I thought about like what is the end result? Like what would fulfillment and completion and like ultimate happiness be for me? And I think it was just like she's actually kind of smiling in this one, and she's not smiling in any of them. So it would be like just like returning to the joy you felt, like just the joy of being human after you've like had an existential crisis. But also I had a cat with my ex, and the cat was my whole life. And when we split up and I moved to New York, and I was just like renting a room in a house, and I didn't have a stable anything. So my ex agreed to take our cat until I got on my feet. And I don't want to cry.
It's okay. Let it out. No one's judging you.
Thanks. So the ultimate like happiness for me was like being in a stable place and getting my cat back. And the ironic thing is I did get my cat back like right when I made the deck, and I was so happy, and he's all over the deck. And then before it went to print, he passed away. And so it was kind of like the end and the beginning, and animals stay with you until you need them. Like you don't need them anymore. Like we had finished that chapter. So it was like, I thought my ending was like being reunited with this like very important love of my life. But it was really saying goodbye.
I mean, that's really, really sweet. And I can definitely identify the difficulty of losing a pet, but then also kind of identifying with the fact that you got to reunite right before that kind of happened. Just to share my own experience, I might cry from it too, so that way you won't be the only one in tears. When I moved away from my hometown in like 2006, I had like a 6-year-old pug who was like my road dog. He was like, when I lost all of my friends from various shit that went on in my life, he was the only person that really stuck by me. Like legitimately, he was my only friend at times. And then when I moved back to this area, he was old. He was like 12 or 15. No, he was like 12. And then when he passed, he was like 15. Um, but it was funny because he was like my best friend through all of this different shit that I went through mentally, even when I moved back, like in and out of psych wards or whatever. And he would always be there for me. And I started getting better. And right when I started getting better again is actually when he passed. And it was like he was there with me throughout all of this shit until he knew that I was going to be okay.
Yep.
And then he left. And it was like, pets are really, really smart. And it was hard for me in some ways because when I got my puppy this February, there was like mannerisms that my puppy now has. It reminds me of the old dog, but like it's hard, but it's also really like endearing in some ways. And this is somewhat stupid because I don't think a lot of people think like this, but for most of my other dog's life, I was high. The other dog was like a party animal and all this stuff. This dog now, like I've never gotten stoned with it or like gave it beer or anything like that. And I've actually been there throughout its whole development to where it just has a way different life than my other dog.
Yeah.
So I think that there's like a sense of completion and a lesson learned from that too.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And I think if, anybody that listens to this follows me on Instagram, they know that I pushed this off for a really long time because I didn't think I was ready, but we just adopted 2 cats like 3 weeks ago. And I had been really fighting my partner because he really, really wanted pets and I was really averse to it. And I made up all kinds of crazy excuses. And then finally I was like, why am I doing this? Like, am I just scared? Am I ready? And I kept pulling the world. And then I didn't end up getting 1. I ended up getting 2. So this has been a completely kind of new experience that I thought was going to be really awful and really sad and like reminding me of my other cat. But they're totally different.
It's funny how you mentioned kind of not wanting another one. Although when I was living at my mom's, she already had another dog. I didn't want to get another dog. I was like, no. I was like all curmudgeon-y about it. And then since we've gotten the puppy, it's completely changed my life in a good way. Sometimes I think that we want to, like, it goes into the concept of kind of identifying with our pain and not wanting to let go and let new things come in that we had talked about earlier.
Right. And then it's like, once you do make that space and the new things come in, like there's a lot of like shadow work in that a lot of times. And then, and I think a lot of times that layer of shadow work it's bringing up those old things so that you can transform your feelings around them. And that was like the last thing in like my card that I wanted to say is like, she's holding a book. And while I had hoped that this project was going to become a book and might become a book in the future, it's really like the book is representative of just looking back into your own past and everything that you came through. And she's smiling. She's looking back at it and understanding all of the lessons and making peace with it and not saying like, oh, why me? That's so fucked up that happened. She was like, no, I get it and I'm grateful for it. And now I'm here.
And I think that really is kind of the ultimate space to get to, is to look at everything that we've learned and reflect upon it so we can kind of, I don't want to say go to bed, but shut our eyes for a bit and kind of look at things through a new perspective and then go back to like the full card of the open-mindedness and new beginnings and on to something new after that little bit of rest. The last thing I'll say, I guess, is this. Oh, I do want to talk about this too. So 2, you have the high priestess energy, and then 1, you have the magician energy. So that's kind of the masculine and the feminine energies coming together. and then creating the Empress card, which is all about kind of that natural creative cycle of everything. So it's the waxing and waning, all kind of represented in the fruition of something. And also abundance is represented in the 3. So there's this sense of abundance and abundance of new opportunities from the closure of all of that. And I guess the one thing I'll say, and then I really am done on this, is it's interesting for me because I've done so much shadow work and everything, but the big lesson for me now is just learning how to be genuinely happy, and just kind of let go of having to see everything through a darker lens. And it's completely uncomfortable to me, in the point of when I get upset or depressed about stuff right now, because it's not as dark and as difficult as it was before, I actually grieve that in a sense, which is kind of weird to say, but like, to not be hopeless feels really fucking uncomfortable to me at times, because so much of my life was built upon that structure of, it was easier to be hopeless because then there was no work to do. Because if I'm hopeless, it's like, fuck it, I don't have to do anything. But in regards to having hope, there's always this sense of, well, I know things can get better. It might take time, and it might take patience, and it might take effort, but things can and will get better. That's not as easy to deal with at times, I feel like.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to plug in my laptop.
You're all good.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
You're all good.
I'm a hot mess today. No, but you're right. Like, I think that's that's not abnormal. So many people that I talk to, and honestly, like a lot of people that I met like through this journey when I moved to New York, and a lot of the early friendships that I made, I fortunately realized very quickly that they were trauma bonds. And they weren't real friends that were going to make any progress. They were people that were really happy in their sadness, mm-hmm. and just wanted to like snuggle in their depression. And I think that those types of people were put in my path to show me the mirror of what I was doing. And realizing, oh, that's actually not what I want at all. Like, I want to move forward. I'm just like wallowing in my shit instead of transforming my narrative. So I need to like plug along with the work, even though it feels really comfortable. I would spend time with these people and I realized like what a broken record it was.
Exactly. I think that's the big thing, is like understanding when we're falling into these cycles that aren't really fulfilling, or these patterns.
Right. And I think like in traditional like talk therapy, there's, this intense sense of, it feels really profound to finally like give yourself permission to give a voice to out loud to everything that goes on inside of your head. But if you're not also coupling that with like somatic exercises to work that through your body, it's like you just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Mm-hmm. And then that becomes like a way to relive it because it's trapped inside your body.
And somatic exercises, that would be like EMDR or whatever it is, or something like that, or?
I use EFT, the tapping.
Okay, I'm familiar
that really
with that.
Helps me. I've been dabbling with breath work a lot.
Okay.
Obviously I don't want to like get too opinionated on your wonderful podcast, but for me personally, I know my body better than any doctor, and I can't take medication. My body does not respond to it. So that's why I've turned away from Western medicine and gone about trying to like get to know myself and know my body and learn my mind and its triggers by doing all of these different types of modalities. So for me, like tapping and Reiki and breath work and yoga when I'm not a lazy person are like the best for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think that in my own personal journey, medication hadn't worked for me really either in the long run. It was something that allowed me to get a sense of stability at one point when I couldn't stabilize myself. And as somebody who my whole life was anti-medication and all of that stuff, it was very humbling to understand that there is some benefit to it, but it really does fall down to the work that we have to do. And ultimately, this is something that like I was involved with the National Alliance of Mental Illness locally, and I talked to the one director of stuff, and I was like, I think that most problems that people face would be solved with better sleeping patterns, diet, exercise, being outdoors, all of this basic stuff that people don't do. And recently I saw a quote by Jim Carrey where he kind of echoed that thought. He's like, depression's a real thing, but if you're not doing all of these other little things, you're not even giving yourself a chance to overcome it. And most people just want to take a pill and think that they're going to be fixed. And then it's not really how this works. And I will say this, if people are at that part of their journey, that's fine, but understand that it can be different at some point. At least that's my experience. It might be different as well. I'm no expert.
No, yeah, and we aren't claiming to be, and certainly not trying to like poo-poo the mental health community. And what I was trying to, I guess, say is that everybody is on their own unique journey and their own unique path. And when I said I know my body better than I trust doctors, I also am thinking that other people also know their body enough to make decisions on their own behalf and pick something that's right for them. This is just my own experience and what works for me.
No, I agree completely. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think it's good to kind of put that disclaimer out there so people don't misinterpret
I'm glad
everything.
you did. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I feel like we're kind of at the end of talking about the world.
So it wouldn't be the world card if we didn't also talk about a new beginning. So Ross and I had discussed doing little mini 3-card readings for one another on this episode, if you're still comfortable with that.
I'm totally fine. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to read for you first?
May I read for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Did you have anything specifically that you wanted to focus on?
No, I'm cool about just seeing what comes up. You can do whatever you think is best. Dealer's choice.
Awesome. Well, since we were discussing the world card, I think it very fitting to kind of stay on that. Sometimes I like to take a card, like if a card's been showing up a lot and I'm maybe not, it keeps coming back, so perhaps I'm not fully integrating its message, and I just do it like a little quick spread around like what the message of that card. So I would definitely today just be asking the world and the universe and your guides to send us some messages on what's next for you.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And what do you need to know? Okay, so I kind of asked, where are you at like right now? And I love that you got the 9 of Wands.
It's very, very interesting. What's your interpretation of that?
So it's funny because 9s are always about being very alone. They're like the lower octave of the hermit. And 9s are about ending of a cycle. And Wands are fire. So that would be a lot of creativity and effort on behalf, like all by yourself, that you've been putting towards something. And as you can see, like the circle's closed and there's blood on the like, they're not antlers, they're branches. So it's like, that's, you know, kind of like those psychic wounds from like all of the stuff that you've done on your own, but staying the course and trusting that like that's all coming to an end. And when a cycle of effort is coming to an end, that opens you up. I want to say for support coming in, and with wands, a new adventure, new creative projects.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just to kind of speak to your point on that, one of the things for me this year, my words were root and expand. So I've definitely rooted, and I'm coming to the expansion point of everything. And what that looks like for me is reaching out to people for a lot of support and understanding that I don't have to do this on my own. And it's kind of this shedding of this old belief structure, which is I was told if you don't like my help, do it yourself a lot growing up, to where I just figured, fuck it, like I'll just do everything myself because nobody's going to try to help me in a productive way. So I'm actually reaching out to all sorts of people for help and getting to a point of reaching out to the community at large to kind of expand my business and to grow kind of what I'm doing. So it's definitely spot on there.
It's funny because the next question that I asked in my head was, if that's where you're at, what do you need to do at this time to kind of like support the transition? And you got the 6 of Cups.
How do you take that one?
Well, I feel like everything you just said kind of like spoke to that with like reaching out. Because if you think of sixes are about reciprocity in relationships. It's the lower octave of the Lovers. So with Cups, that's like emotional connection. Also, all of the 6s come right after the 5s. The 5s are contraction cards and 6s are expansion. And this one was reversed. So to me, that said that you've been putting things out there. You're ready to go from this aloneness of the 9 to the connection of the 6, but it's not quite there yet. So I would say be patient in it and know that you're taking a lot of really good steps, and your water is learning to seek its own level so that you can receive as much as you give.
Definitely been one of the hard things, trying to find my circle of people, because oftentimes what I would try to do is put my level I would try to roll downhill because that's what gravity does. And that was always kind of destructive and counterproductive. So learning boundaries and learning to stay in my own lane until I find the right people, and understanding it's better to be alone than with the wrong people, has been difficult at times, but it's definitely good to see that it'll pan out eventually.
So when I pulled the third card, 2 cards came out, because my third question was, we started with where are you now, what you can do to support it, and then what's on the other side of it. And what was on the other side of it was another 6, the 6 of Wands. So kind of going from that aloneness of the 9 of Wands to that reciprocal relationship of the 6 of Wands.
Yeah, that'd be really nice. One of the things with one of the diagnoses that I have, one of the symptoms of it is actually one-sided relationships, to where either I feel that I have to do all the work or I make the other person do all of the work. So really trying to find that reciprocity in something, that would be amazing, because I honestly can't think of a time when I've ever really experienced it in a true way. Because there's only so much work, obviously, that I can do on stuff on my own side of things. So I think that's great. And then also understanding that in regards to other people, I have to be willing to give as much as I'm willing to take too, to like take ownership of my own end of things. So I think that's really cool and fitting.
Definitely. And the card that came with it, which was funny because you actually said like my keyword with this card when you were speaking before, the 4 of Pentacles came with it, which for me is about boundaries. If 4s are about structure, and setting things in place in Pentacles are about the earth element. I don't think that that's just the resources that are like monetary resources. And, you know, historically, this was a card about being miserly and not sharing. And I think that that meaning is bullshit. And maybe if you're reading cards for like shitty people, but yeah, but I'm like, people that are spiritual are not, they're not miserly. They understand that money is just energy. And if you need it, the best thing to do is give it.
Yeah, you kind of get you get back what you put out.
Exactly. And just also, so in this context, that's why for me, the meaning has changed, where it's about setting up proper boundaries around your resources. And Pentacles have, even though they're about like things of the earthly realm, that's also our bodies, you know? That's our own wellness. That's your physical health. So having boundaries around how much energy you're giving to other people.
I definitely think that's super important for me. One of the things that I struggle with my whole life is codependency. So pouring a lot into people, or like I had said, having people pour a lot into me, and then understanding that having boundaries is not only self-respect, it's respect to the other person, because I think a lot of people fail to recognize that most of the issues they face within a relationship are from letting people cross their own boundaries, and it's not people doing them wrong. It's them not having a clear distinction of what is theirs, or not what is theirs, but where they start and where the other person ends. And then that blows up in their face and they blame the other person and take no accountability. Then they get that in other relationships and so on and so forth. So yeah, so boundaries are something I had to learn. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm happy that you said that. But like when you see these two cards together, the story that it tells me, if it's saying that what's coming for you is, if sixes are about reciprocity and the fours are about having those boundaries around your own space and wellness and resources, gifts, that's finding those reciprocal relationships so that it's not just you and your cross to bear.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'm getting tired of carrying shit on my
own. You're in a place, you're coming into a place where you don't have to fear every person that wants to get close to you and push them away, because you could be worried that you've done so much work. Are they going to be unhealthy for you? And I think that you'll figure it out pretty fucking quick. And then be like, okay, thank you. I've already worked through that. And instead of having a lingering attachment or feeling indebted to them in some way, or like you owe them anything, you'll just be like, okay, you know what? Thank you, next.
I've definitely been coming into that a lot too, in regards to the thank you next, and like trying to date or see who I connect with, and not beating myself up for not connecting with people, because that was something that I did for a long time, kind of having that guilt or that shame for not letting everybody in, which is a whole different issue. But it's been a process. It's super cool that all those cards kind of came up. It's been a very interesting day with internal lessons prior to this, talking about the world card, and then what came up in the reading. So
yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what I always, if I know people, if I know I'm going to be doing a reading for somebody, I always like to do just like a little mini meditation ahead of time and pull a couple of cards around like what is the nature of the reading and how can I be most of service. And what I thought was interesting, I pulled for you, what was it? It was I want to say
fire.
No, it was I should have like paid more attention to that. It was really good. I was like, oh, I could just leave these cards out and go with them. It was the Page of Pentacles and the Ace of Pentacles and the Two of Cups.
Two of Cups is a really good card.
Yeah, it was upside down, but...
Oh, shit. Sounds about right.
But I think that it's funny because that's kind of what we were talking about is like seeing, you know, the Page of Pentacles is like having, it's like a fresh start, but coming from a place of wisdom. And so having that Page of Pentacles looking at those Two of Cups, like knowing what is in alignment and what isn't. So that way when you do come to something that's really in alignment with you, you're not going to push it away, but you're also not going to put it on a pedestal and worship it.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
No.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. I really identified with everything that came up, so
awesome.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, you're welcome. So although I feel connected to you, there's two different ways that I like to connect energy with people before I read for them. I'm going to give you your option of the two. We can do a meditation, or I have a deck of conversation cards that are supposed to help spark conversation. And the way that we would do that deck is I would draw one of those cards, read you the question, you would answer it, and then I would answer the same question. So
well, let's do that. That sounds fun.
Okay. Yeah, I got these cards for me, and then I've started doing that, and it seems to be like a really cool way to do stuff. So, okay. I feel like we've talked about this question the whole podcast. So I'm going to draw another one. Okay, this is kind of funny too because I want to change this one. But it says, describe a situation where things turned out for the better as a result of you letting go of control.
My existence.
Think smaller scale.
I guess what comes to mind, the funniest thing is like how I met have I told you the story of like how I met my partner?
Mm-mm. If you have, I don't remember.
Okay. So I was like my first foray into online dating and, you know, trying to date on apps, and it was just a dumpster fire. Just literally the worst. I mean, great. Like now I'm like happy I had all those experiences because it really showed me what my own like shadow work to be done around relationships were. But I had a friend that was dating some guy that I guess one of his friends saw a picture of us online and was like, oh, who's your friend? I want to meet her. And so my friend came back and she was like, oh my gosh, my boyfriend's friend wants to meet you. And I was like, no, he's way too young. He lives like in a different borough, like not my type at all. Thanks. No. And this went on for like 8 months until finally I was like dating. I think I was like going on a couple of dates with like a couple of different guys that I knew were not going anywhere, but I was like, I don't want to sit at home by myself. So it's like just nice to have like somebody to go out and like have a drink with or have a meal with, even though like nothing there. And then I said, my friend asked me to watch her cat when she went out of town. And I was like, I love you to death, but to commute without a car to Staten Island from Brooklyn, like not going to happen. It's like 2.5 hours added on to my day. I was like, I love you, but I can't do it. I was like, you know, why don't you ask that nice guy that is friends with your boyfriend to watch your cat? Tell him I'll go on a date with him, like just as a joke. And she laughed and she was like, "Ooh, I think you want to go out with him." And I was like, "Absolutely not." I was just kidding. And I swear to God, the next day that guy like reached out to me, and I like immediately called her and I was like, "Did you tell this guy I would go on a date with him?" And she goes, "No, you told the universe you were ready." She was like, "You kept asking for like look at your list, like a long-term, like emotionally stable, like partner, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up going out with him, and now we live together with 2 cats.
Oh, wow.
So don't try to push your love life. Let that shit come to you. And then don't push it away for 8 months because you think you can do a better job.
But it still worked out in your favor anyhow, so maybe you did the right thing by
like
pushing it away.
It comes when it's ready, but I asked for something, and then I tried to go get it on my own, but by just letting go, what I asked for came to me. I just didn't trust it. Anyways, your ball.
I can't think of one single time I've let go of control of anything. No.
Not even the time you let me hijack your podcast?
Let me think. I mean, in recovery in general, it's about letting go of control of things. I can think of a lot of heavy experiences, and I don't want to share one of those. Let me try to think of a lighter one. Sometimes just in regards to like setting up for shows or stuff like that, I've been very rigid with how I wanted things displayed, but allowing my mom to take more control and ownership of the business since she owns half of it, and letting her to kind of set things up and seeing that actually works out way better when she does it than when I try to like control and micromanage everything. And that goes into one of my other issues of just having a hard time receiving or letting go of control. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I really liked your story. That's actually very inspirational for me. Like, I feel like I'm getting more from that than I'm going to be giving. So the next thing that I like to ask people to do is tell me how many times they want the card shuffled, especially since I'm reading online, since you can't shuffle them yourself. Between 3 and 5.
4.
Okay. I have to like put that little barrier on there because one time I had somebody say 21 times and I was like, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the same questions that you gave me as well, if that's okay with you.
Totally.
I don't remember what they actually were though, because my mind doesn't work like that. So
that's okay. They were
I'm just grabbing a pen. All right, what were they?
Where are you at right now?
Where are you at? What was the next one?
What do you need to do in this moment to support your expansion or shift?
What do you need to support your shift? And what was the last one?
What's on the other side, or what's coming in?
All right. So let me do this real quick. Where are you at? This deck is the Wildwood Tarot, and stones is relative to pentacles in traditional tarot. And as you can see, this one is actually called skill. So it's just about kind of sharpening your skills, honing your craft more and more, figuring out how to show up the way that you want to in a big way and get the results that you would like overall. It's kind of also this more, I don't want to say passive, but more intentional approach to everything, and not so much action, but making sure the actions that you do take are precise as to the results that you'd like to achieve.
Woo! That feels very, very accurate.
I'm really happy about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really funny that today is like the day that we picked to do this last podcast and like wrap up. And tomorrow is actually, I'm doing my first web class.
Exciting, dude. That's so awesome.
Thank you. It's very exciting, very nerve-wracking. But it feels like, I don't know, like aligned, and I'm really looking forward to taking the work that I do to a different level.
Yeah, I definitely think you're ready for it. I'm sure that it's going to be excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a shadow work class.
Oh, very, very cool.
Yeah.
If you're going to be doing more of those, you'll have to give me the information so I can put it in the show notes for this.
Yeah, I will. I'll send it to you. We're doing like a live class tomorrow, but it's something that people can download and do on their own.
Okay, so they can do it at a later date too.
Exactly. So they can sign up. They can sign up for it and do it with us tomorrow at 2, or they can keep it forever and always. Yeah, the class is like only $22.
That's a really good deal.
Yeah, super excited. Thanks for letting me give a shameless plug.
You're all good. Unfortunately, it's going to be after the fact, but they can still download it. So, uh, do you have any questions on this one? It feels like you got it. You're all aligned with it. One of the
Yes.
things that I want to say too, though, is there's these little sparks up here, like these little
Uh-huh.
candles or whatever. And to me, that's just showing all sorts of new creative projects coming.
I love
Um,
that.
so just be mindful of that. See what else comes up from everything. What do you need to support your shift? You have the 8 of Arrows or 8 of Swords in traditional tarot in the reverse position.
Wow.
So I'm going to turn it right side up. This card says struggle, obviously. To me, this is about kind of letting go of the concept of having to struggle or to make yourself crazy to accomplish things. It goes into kind of the concept of surrender and allowance, kind of what came up in the conversational card of letting things actually flow instead of trying to force everything. Uh, and I get that you're kind of there, but maybe sometimes mentally you're not still there because of the whole
Yeah.
sword aspect. And it's interesting too because you have 2 8s so far.
Right? You had 2 6s and I have 2 8s.
Yeah. So what are 8s about again? It's like balance, or no?
8s are about action.
Hmm.
But like you said, it's like passive action.
Mm-hmm. Also change, right?
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah. Don't overthink it. Like I think one of the other things that I would say on that too is have more confidence in your ability,
Oh, thank you.
which I've definitely seen your confidence in everything grow throughout all of our chats and stuff like that. Um,
Same.
thank you. But allow yourself to have more of it. One other thing that I'll say on this too, there's the emotions right there. I'd say be maybe more emotionally vulnerable in your work and maybe not so, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say sterile, but there's a sense of like coldness in some of your work because you don't want to. How do I want to put this? I think you're so afraid of failing at times that you don't want to invest emotionally in it, and that when you can kind of invest more of your emotional energy and stuff, you're going to get a lot more rewards from it. Does that make sense?
It really does. It really resonates. Thank you.
Don't be scared. What's on the other side? So you have King of Bows. In traditional tarot, this would be King of Wands.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a really good one to get because it's like the visionary and the entrepreneur card. It's really having this sense of sight, being able to create it. One of the things that I always like to point out to people on this too, actually, I'm going to ask you, what sticks out to you the most on this card? Like what comes to your eye first?
The snakes.
Symbols of wisdom, change, kind of shedding skin. But then I also take this as, although this is wands and it's more about creation, I take this as thoughts sometimes. This is kind of saying untangle some of your thoughts, untangle some of your creations, learn to, I don't want to say do one thing at a time because I don't think that's right, but learn to see things as separate so you can allow them to come together. This is a breeding ball too. Like snakes get in these breeding balls, which are like giant snake orgies. So sometimes you have so many different ideas going on that they can become muddy, but that's also how you birth the one idea. So learn how to separate your ideas more that's coming up. And one good thing about this too is there's this rigidness in the bottom of the card in the stones, and it opens up to this kind of clear blue sky, this ability to clearly communicate your ideas in a big way, and also to hear your ideas in a big way. So overall, your skill is paying off for you right now in a big way. You're gaining more confidence to support your shift. Don't overthink everything. Don't fight so much. Surrender. And that's going to result in big gains for you in how you're able to see your ideas going forward, and also just expanding your business. Real quick, before I close everything up too, I like to do what's called a quintessence card for people. This is actually going to be from a different deck. So we're going to add up all of the numbers. You have 8 and 8 is 16, plus 14 is 30. Do you want card number 30, or would you prefer card number 3?
Well, I'm a Leo, and more is more. Can I have both?
No.
Aw, then you pick.
No, I was just joking. Calm down.
It's fair. You have the right to say no. Like I have the right to ask for more.
Absolutely. So I think this is actually really fitting in some way for you too. The cool thing about quintessence cards, especially doing it from a separate deck, is I find that there's like an extra layer of validation to everything. Do you want to start with 3, or do you want to start with 30?
Let's start with 3.
Okay. So 3.
That's cool.
Difficulty in the beginning, growing pains, doubts and fears, awkwardness, becoming stronger, vulnerability, and experience. Yeah. So, I mean, in regards to the world card too, it's kind of breaking out of that egg so you can go to the cosmic egg of the Fool again. So it's interesting how this came up, this kind of new life. And then in regards to 30, I don't know why it's so hard for me to get the angle right. It's the clinging, and that is fire, illumination, inspiration, devotion, an all-consuming passion, regeneration, spirituality, virtue, and enlightenment. So I think that's really true of this whole process of what came up, kind of starting out not very sure of yourself, honing your skill, getting to this place of having to accept the fact that you're probably a lot better than you give yourself credit for, and you're a lot more capable than you're actually allowing yourself to see at times. And then as soon as you can stop fighting yourself so much with all of this chitter chatter in your mind about maybe not feeling worthy, you're going to free up a lot of energy to have more creative potential. This is the last thing I'll say. I always like to tell people when I read for them that anxiety, worry, self-doubt, and all this stuff is like running a bunch of apps on a cell phone in a big way, where it's like drawing all the battery power, slowing down your memory. And when you start swiping up, it frees up things, and things come a lot quicker for you. So that's kind of what's coming up.
I love it. That's amazing, and aligned on so many levels. Like my whole business is shifting. Everything's changing, and I'm just kind of like going with the flow. Like I did the last workshop, I do the intention setting workshops, and I always have like a very clear intention that I'm working towards. And this time I was just like, my intention is just to be with the next steps and the next phase.
I think that's a really good thing to do. I think so many times we have it set in our minds that we know what's best for us, but taking our hands off the wheel and saying, kind of, universe, what do I need to see? What like is coming up? I think that's such a healthier way to approach. Not that it's not okay to want things, but to let stuff work itself out in your favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just be with like the timing of things and trusting.
Yeah, having faith and hope that it'll all work out.
It's not even having faith and hope. It's, in times that are uncertain, I think it's up to us to be able to create our own certainty.
I think that's a good point.
and like the certainty that I work personally with creating is like, I do my EFT and I tap my affirmations. And one of my affirmations is my success is inevitable.
I think that's a really good point. That's one of the things that I often consider too, because most of the time, I think what separates successful people from unsuccessful people is unsuccessful people give up before the imminence of their success. Like if they just really stick with it for long enough, eventually law of averages or whatever kicks in, and then it's going to happen regardless if you stick to it and kind of work on the things that need worked on. But it goes into the concept of failing forward, getting comfortable with failing, learning how to have honest conversations with yourself. But yeah, I see big things for you. Even outside of the cards, I definitely have faith that you're going to do a lot more than I think you even see you're capable of now. So
thank you, Ross. I hope that you also realize that like when you say things to me and you see things in me, that I'm just a mirror of things that you need to say to yourself to hear.
One of my big things is thank you for that. I appreciate that. Like sometimes I'm a little bit too cocky with that. So I'm trying to find the equilibrium, because I guess cockiness is a making up for the deficit at times of not believing those things. So, so I think that that's a good thing to remember, that like, as long as I'm on the right path, it's just sticking with it is what it comes down to. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I guess I do need to get more comfortable receiving that from other people instead of being like, I know. You don't know who you're talking to. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much for reading for me. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate being able to exchange it. Thank you so much for doing the Fool's Guide to Tarot with me, and for kind of being a big part of this podcast. I think together we've done, 23 episodes total, the original interview, and then these other 22 episodes. So you definitely have the most episodes of anybody on the show. So you win.
It's a Leo ass thing. Always got to have the biggest whatever. Yeah, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this and reaching out to me. I mean, that was like a really magical thing. I mean, I don't know if people remember this, but I don't know how you found me, but
Instagram.
you sent me an Instagram DM and you asked me to be on your podcast literally like days after I had set the intention of wanting to be on podcasts, because public speaking was my biggest fear in life. And for anybody who's like done an astrology reading for me, they're always like, oh, your sun is in your career house with Mercury. You're going to be a public speaker. You're going to be like, or you could be an actor. You could be blah, 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 but you're definitely like a public figure. And I was always like, oh, no. And I think when I started doing like a really serious, steady tarot practice, I also did like a year and a half of like throat chakra work and like solar plexus, like healing between the two when I became Reiki attuned, because I was like, okay, I don't want to fuck up my like thing that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm in my 30s. Like if this is the life path and I'm doing everything I can to go the opposite direction and try to push everybody else into the spotlight because I'm afraid of it. Male presence.
Oh, you froze for a second.
Did you hear any of that?
I
couldn't tell that it was frozen. Like you looked just very pensive.
I got to the point of when you were saying in the spotlight, you always put other people in the spotlight.
Right, because I was afraid of it. And podcasts seemed safe because it's just your voice. And then when you set it up, it was a video and you were a man and I was terrified. But I wanted to, like I was saying before, I wanted to thank you for being a safe male presence.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I think, especially with women in my community, to do the work that we do, we have to be so vulnerable. And the dealing with like male relationships and the healing journey, like that's very uncomfortable. Like I have a lot of friends who are so amazing and deep and incredible healers, and they won't work with men because it doesn't feel safe. So that's part of the work that you don't even realize that you're doing by just being a safe person and a safe male presence in a time where men need that and women also need to like feel safe. So thank you for that.
That's actually making me tear up in a big way, because a big part of my own journey was like healing some of the ways that I related to women when I was in active addiction, and being like a very unhealthy person for a lot of people. So it means a lot to me to like really hear that, because that was something that like a lot of shame and guilt that I've carried with that. And I definitely feel in a better space with it, but like literally hearing that, that means a lot to me. So thank you. And it's really nice to be able to like talk to this throughout all of this stuff, because it was a lot more than just like talking about the cards. It was like a very healing process for me, and I'm sure for you as well, just to like go through everything and understand how it relates to our journey, and have a safe environment to talk about the whole journey through the tarot with somebody else. So I think that like I really appreciate you for that as well. And it's really cool to like have that deep layer of connection and discussion throughout all of this. And then also to have like you be on the last episode of the podcast in a big way, because for me, when I started all of this around 3 years ago, like I was completely isolated from everybody. I didn't have any friends anymore. I didn't have anybody in my life. Completely isolated and alone, and starting all of this with nobody listening, with no real idea what the hell I'm doing, and to like have gone through the whole journey and have it actually like end with somebody to talk to is like a super cool thing in a big way. And I don't know, it's just cool to see the progression of you throughout all of our times chatting, when you were like very, very soft spoken. The very first episode, we were like, I don't even know if you can barely hear yourself. If people go back and listen to the first episode with Stefanie, I think it was in like February of last year. It's amazing to see how much confidence she's gotten in herself throughout like all of this. Like I'm incredibly proud of you for like everything that you've done for yourself since we've started working on everything. And I guess one of the things that I want to say too, and this is more so directed at the audience, like thank you for listening to the Fool's Guide to Tarot in a big way, because this has been something that's been very meaningful to me. And then also thank you for just listening as I went through this whole journey. Like starting off on this, like I really was like the Fool card in a big way, and then going through and healing a lot of my own path, and then coming to the World card of integrating everything that I've talked about for the past 3 years. It's kind of impressive. Earlier today, I was coming back from walking my dog, and I was thinking about how I started this journey on the love and light tip. Then I went through all of this shadow work, and now I'm kind of at a central point where I have to allow both things in. Like I'm at a very balanced state internally, and it's really fucking weird. And it is that integrative experience. And I'm just really thankful for people that this has helped people, because I've gotten messages from people all over the world about how this podcast has helped them. I've seen how episodes that Stefanie and I have done have helped people. And I'm just really, really grateful for it. I'm also grateful to be comfortable and confident enough to let this go and to like have a sense of closure with it, and not to have to drag it on any longer than it needed to. Because I think that that's growth for me as well. Instead of just doing something to do it, to be okay to let it go, to surrender to the fact that there's better things that I need to focus my energy on. And I guess the last thing I'll say about this whole closure thing is I do have other projects that I have planned. I'm going to be starting like a YouTube, a more serious YouTube channel of just readings and kind of interacting with people in that capacity. I have a Facebook group that I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to get more serious about blogging and writing, which is actually what I intended to do when I started all of this, was writing more of my experience. I'll be finishing my second book sometime coming up. Like, I have so much shit going on, which is one of the reasons I have to set this down. So I guess I'll plug myself for once on this, because I hardly ever do it. If anybody wants to get my first book, Vagrant Verses, it's on Amazon. You can find me on Facebook. Oracle at Mushin is the account that I use mostly now. You can get a tarot reading from me there. And just stay plugged in. And then I also want to give Stefanie the opportunity to plug what she's doing. So Stefanie, you can have the floor. Thank you so much, everybody.
Oh man, I don't want to follow that. That was like such a good, beautiful, this has been such an incredible experience. That who knew, it just popped out of nowhere. And I thank you so much for including me in this, in your journey, and going through all of this with me. I've really looked forward to it every week. And I know we haven't all been super consistent with the recordings since we both moved at the exact same time, which is hilarious. But not surprising. Yeah. So get Ross's book. It's amazing. What am I working on? Like I said, I'm putting out my first class that you can download. I've been this year. I not only tried to work on healing my throat chakra and fear of public speaking by going on as a podcast guest, but also teaching workshops. So a lot of people know that I teach workshops all over Brooklyn, and this will be my first thing putting it out into the world, and there will be more of that. And really trying to finish my book so that Moon Void Tarot has a book to go with it, but which is hilarious about your recommendation for me with that river about being more emotionally open, because I realized that it was safe for me to make a tarot deck about my book because I was too afraid to publish my book. But I was like, the tarot deck is a book. It's my book. So when I put out the guidebook, instead of just having the card descriptions listing, I'm going to actually include part of my story in the cards. So it's going to be real awesome. Personal. And I've been terrified. And I've been trying to publish this thing for 2 years. It hasn't worked. And the second that I said, okay, I'm ready to surrender and be really emotionally open with this.
That's awesome. Were you terrified? No, that was a horrible one.
Oh my God, that was amazing. So many dad joke points for you.
So people can get your cards and also book your services through moonvoidtarot.com, correct?
Yes.
And also etsy.com/shop/moonvoidtarot.
Yes. You know my website's better than me.
It's one of the great things of a misguided mind. I probably remember other people's stuff better than my own as well. So the other thing is they can connect with you on Instagram. All of those links will be down below. And as far as your classes locally, if people are listening and they are in the Brooklyn area, where can they find out information about your classes? From your website?
Yes. On the About Me page of my website, I update it every month to reflect all of the classes that I'm doing with links to them. And I think in March, I'm going to be doing, I do yoga retreats. I read tarot, and I'm also going to be offering Reiki at them now. So I'm really excited about that.
Very, very cool. One other thing that I wanted to ask you, the Sexoscope thing that you do as well. Where can people find out information about that?
Yes, thank you. I almost forgot I did that too. Yeah, you had my number with like, oh, you're doing so many things. So Dame Products, it's like a very woke sex toy company in Brooklyn Their blog is called The Horizontal. You can go to dameproducts.com. The November horoscopes are going to drop on the 1st, but the October ones are still up.
Awesome.
Those there. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah, so I guess we're not going to do the thing of where you can reach out or contact us. So we're not going to answer any questions because this is the last episode. You can obviously reach out and contact us just to say what's up or talk to us about current things. Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate you, Stefanie. And you can actually have the last word.
Yes, I'm just going to echo you with gratitude and praise. Thank you so much for creating this podcast and for sharing so openly your journey. Like I mentioned before, I think it's really, really important. I think that women don't believe that men are spiritual or self-reflective. And I think that more men need to speak up about that. I know that you've gone through your own healing journey. And we mentioned earlier that it's a hard thing to grieve who you used to be when you've become someone else. And I promise you that the way I described you is the only way I've ever experienced you. And so in my mind, and I'm a fixed sign, so I'm always right. That's who you actually are. So just accept it and know that like those are the types of people that will be coming into your life. So thank you for everybody listening. And I love you, Ross. You're the best.
I love you too, Stefanie. Thank you so much.
All right.
Peace, everybody. Oop, I hit the wrong button.